Good afternoon. Welcome to this meeting of the Board of Education. This meeting is being televised live on ACPS TV and streamed on ACPS YouTube channel. General information and protocols for the meeting are posted on the sign by the doorway as you enter the room, so please make sure you have those if you have not already. Please pause now for the invocation. O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies, being ever mindful of your guidance, stir us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. And would you please all stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. That brings us to item 2.03, approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve. Minutes
Second.
is written.
Do I have consensus? Thank you. And that moves us to item 2.04, establish agenda order. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the agenda is printed.
Second.
Do I have consensus? Thank you. We have item 2.05, no recognitions today, so we will be moving on to item 2.06, Educator of the Month. Mr. McGrath.
Our January 2023 Educator of the Month is an integral part of the leadership at Severna Park High School. She initiates, develops, and implements outstanding programs for the students, staff, and community. She was instrumental in working with the former principal to find ways to support all the wonderful curricular and extracurricular programs. She also works with students and parents on schedule requests at the start of each semester to ensure students' needs are met. Lindsay Abruzzo, newly appointed principal and former assistant principal at Severna Park High School. Ms. Abruzzo promotes positive changes in the growth of students and staff at Severna Park. By always remaining positive in the face of adversity, helping others to understand their concerns are being heard, and more importantly, action will be taken to the best of the school's ability. She tackles all challenges with grace and in a helpful manner, always timely with her response. Lindsay makes outstanding contributions to the school by collaborating with teachers and counselors to support and promote a safe, healthy, and effective school environment. She is always visible in her supervision of school each day, along with attending many extracurricular events as the lead administrator for SPHS athletics. Ms. Abruzzo consistently performs with a high degree of professionalism. She carries out all her duties and responsibilities in a professional manner. She is a role model for other employees, a leader amongst her colleagues, and is unafraid of taking on new tasks that may seem overwhelming to others. Ms. Abruzzo is a team player, supportive of others, communicates well, develops strong relationships, and works well with her colleagues, faculty, staff, students, and parents. For these reasons, and many, many more, the Board of Education is honored to recognize you as the Educator of the Month for January 2023. Congratulations, and would you please come forward to accept your award?
What lie did they? Did
I
they
was
tell
here
you
to talk
get
about graduation. I even brought my laptop. Oh my gosh, thank you so much.
Thank you and congratulations. Yes, Ms. Abruzzo, who is with you today? Hi.
My secretary, and my husband, Mark, and Janine, our regional.
Did you say your daughter's name is Tobin? An excellent name. Well, welcome. Okay, so that brings us now to item 2.07, Employee of the Month. And for that, I turn to Mr. Silkworth.
Thank you, President Tobin. Our Employee of the Month for January 2023 goes above and beyond what is expected of her in the classroom. She's willing to take on any task that will help her students grow and achieve. Her willingness to take on extra work allows for consistency for her students who thrive on routine. Jessica Kazmarek, teacher assistant, special education, Glendale Elementary Regional. Ms. Kazmarek creates positive relationships with all stakeholders. Her students adore her. It's evident that they feel a bond with her. She communicates often with parents regarding student progress and daily point sheet achievements. She has created professional yet friendly relationships with all staff members and is willing to help a colleague whenever possible. She willingly covers duties for other staff members and substitutes for teachers whenever needed. Jessica has shown, especially during the pandemic, that she is one of the most positive influences in Glendale EDR. She is dependable and flexible, often taking on more than is expected. She continuously looks for ways to improve and learn. She has a caring and kind relationship with each student. She has a talent for seeing the details of the big picture and will bring ideas, problems, and solutions to our administrator in a professional and respectful way. Ms. Kazmarek, you are an amazing teacher assistant. You can be counted on even during the toughest of times. Today, the Board of Education recognizes you as the January 2023 Employee of the Month. Congratulations. Would you please come forward to accept your award?
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Ms. Kazmarek, why did you think you were here today?
So Ms. McLean said we were coming for a meeting for a regional, and she wanted me to come with her. I don't want to say why. She never really said exactly
And who is with you today?
why. So my husband, my mom, my dad, my daughter Haley and Hannah, and Miss Barr from our school. And Miss McLean, of course. I just like to say that I love working in the regional program with all of our students. It's a challenge, but I love it every day.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you and congratulations. That now brings us to item 2.08, Volunteer of the Month. And for that, I turn to Ms. Ellis.
Thank you. My apologies for being a little late. And wow, you guys are moving fast. I am delighted to read this next, the Volunteer of the Month. H. Jackson Brown Jr. tells us that the happiest people are not those getting more, but those giving more. This month's Volunteer of the Month must be one of the happiest people, as evidenced by all she gives. Ms. Robin Cohen, the Board of Education, is thrilled to honor you as our January 2023 Volunteer of the Month. Ms. Cohen has served on the PTA in various roles for 6 years and has volunteered at the school in some capacity as long as her 2 children have attended Nantucket Elementary. Oh. This is her last year with Nantucket as her second child moves on to middle school, and her absence will be greatly felt next school year. Katie McKeon, Nantucket PTA Vice President, shared how Ms. Cohen gives so much of her time and expertise to help the Nantucket school community, including organizing booster-thons, having 2 buddy benches installed at the playgrounds. I love that. A free little library installed on school grounds, spearheading the installment of a water bottle filling station, and countless other initiatives. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Ms. Cohen kept families engaged and feeling like a community even when they were not together in person. Along with the initiatives that benefit the students and community, Ms. Cohen also supports the staff and teachers of Nantucket Elementary. She single-handedly arranged monthly coffee carts, snack carts, and birthday treats, all to convey how much she appreciates them. Ms. Cohen is always looking out for the best interest of the school, students, teachers, staff, and the Crofton Gambrels community at large. She recruits other volunteers and welcomes anyone who wants to be involved to make the Nantucket Elementary community the best it can be. Ms. McCain had many wonderful things to say about Ms. Cohen, describing her as devoted, responsible, knowledgeable, approachable, inclusive, welcoming, and just a bright, wonderful person to be around. Alexis McKay, principal, shared the significant impact Ms. Cohen has had on Nantucket Elementary due to her generosity, graciousness, and selfless giving of her time. She described how Ms. Cohen is frequently seen at school before, during, and after hours, emphasizing that if the school is in need of anything, I know I can reach out to Robin and it will get done. Ms. Cohen, Nantucket Elementary School, and the entire Anne Arundel County Public Schools community is blessed to have such a dedicated volunteer, and we thank you for your service. Would you please come forward? It is with great appreciation that I would like to present this Volunteer of the Month bell and certificate to you as a symbol of your appreciation. Thank you for all that you do. I am going to give you this so you can see the wonderful things that were said about you. And this is your certificate. You can like to hold that and your bell.
Thank you. Thank you.
So what did you think you were doing here today?
I thought I was here to honor Miss McKay. But I did just get out that my daughter was absent, and I was like freaking out.
So I see you have a whole crowd with you.
Yes,
today.
yes. So
Congratulations.
thank you very much.
So if we'll take a few minutes break, everyone who's here and the honorees, if you could please go out to the front and we'll have pictures with the superintendent and board members who presented the awards, and enjoy. Welcome back, everyone. So this brings us to item 4.01, the PTA report.
Good afternoon and Happy New Year, President Tobin, Vice President Silkworth, Dr. Bedell, and members of the board. My name is Tamara Beeger, and I'm Vice President of the Anne Arundel County Council of PTAs. Thank you for allowing us time to speak this afternoon. AACC PTA has some exciting new things in the works for the new year. First is the return of our Founders Day celebration this spring. This annual event celebrates the hard work and dedication of our PTA leaders in the county, along with remembering those who founded both the National PTA and AACC PTA. This is also our only fundraiser to raise money for scholarships and other AACC PTA initiatives. A save the date and more information will be available soon. Our scholarship program is also getting an update. This newly revamped scholarship program will widen the gap of applicants and also increase the amount of funding given to our scholarship winners. Information about the scholarship program and application window will also be available soon. As a call to action, AACC PTA is looking for volunteers to sit on the nominating committee as we will be electing a new slate of officers this May. This includes a new president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. If you are interested in serving on this committee, please email us at info@aaccpta.org. A congratulations to the 16 students from MacArthur Middle, Watchapel Elementary, South Shore Elementary, and Odenton Elementary whose artwork has made it to the county level of the National PTA Reflections Arts Program. These pieces will be judged on January 12th, and winners will be celebrated at our reflection ceremony on Tuesday, February 21st, 2023 at the Odenton Library. Congratulations again to all the participants and good luck in the upcoming rounds. All artwork will also be displayed at both the Odenton Public Library and here at the Parham Building. Applications are still available for Maryland residents interested in serving as the parent member of the Maryland State Board of Education. The selected candidate will serve as the voice for parents of public school students in Maryland. Applicants are not required to be a member of the PTA or any particular parent group to be considered for the appointment. Applications can be found at www.fspta.org. And our next monthly AACC PTA meeting will be held virtually on Monday, January 9th, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. To ensure that you are receiving important AACC PTA messages, meeting registration, and training information, please send us your local PTA unit's officer contact information at info@aaccpta.org, or you can contact us on Facebook. As always, we encourage our board members, staff, and families to support your local PTA by joining. It is never too late to join, even in the middle of the year. And we thank you for allowing us to speak today and wish everyone a happy new year again. Thank you.
Happy New Year and thank you. And I just want to say I highly recommend to everyone here the opportunity to attend the Reflections ceremony in February. It's a wonderful event and the work that the students do is really incredible. So thank you. And thank you for all those updates. This brings us to item 4.02, the President's Report. I have no official report today. I simply want to say that I was delighted to have the opportunity to attend the listening and learning session with Dr. Bedell and Mr. Silkworth at North County prior to the holiday, and I look forward to attending this evening at 5:30 at Tyler Heights. Last night was Crofton. We have, I think, 6 more to go after an extensive tour of the county that has been undertaken. So thank you, because that's a huge lift for Dr. Bedell and all the staff. We have many of our staff who come to each and every event to make sure that every group of participants has a facilitator and can record, have all their input recorded. So again, a big thank you to the staff for all of that extra work that they are doing. Which brings us to item 4.03, Policy Committee Report. Ms. Dent.
Good afternoon, President Tobin, Vice President Silkworth. Happy New Year, everyone. Superintendent, welcome. So I have a great policy meeting. Yesterday, I want to formally say that I'm pleased to announce that Ms. Grace Wilson officially is our new acting legislative and policy specialist, and that she will be our point person going into the General Assembly. She's more than capable of doing it. She's been with us, as you well know, since August of 2021, and she was the I call it the best hand for Ms. Ortiz going into the General Assembly. And as she said yesterday, she's more than confident that she's ready to take on the task, and we look forward to working with her. And so I'd like for each of you, if you have any questions about policy, to give her not only the same courtesy that we did with Ms. Ortiz, but please feel free to reach out to her directly. And so with that, we had a great meeting yesterday. We covered 2 policies, the internal audit policy, as well as talking about how we are going to work on a policy on fees associated with curriculum or students that are looking to take AP classes, and how do we make sure that they are good stewards of the government equipment, materials, and et cetera. And just in case, that policy will be getting ready to come, not this period, but probably January the 18th. So you should be able to see that. And with that, I'd like to personally thank Mr. Mosier for being so put up with us during the transition. But I wanted to formally thank you because you are always, no matter what time, day or night that I text or call you, I don't know what you do, I don't know where you sleep, but he always responds right back to you. But when it came to the transition in between Ms. Ortiz and Ms. Wilson, you've been just a pillar and solid. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. And with that, if there are no other questions, Dr. Tobin, that's it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dent. And yes, we have much to thank Mr. Mosier for. Okay, that brings us to Section 5 presentations. Item 5.01, we have today a special guest with us to give us the Anne Arundel County fiscal year 2024 revenue outlook. We welcome Mr. Chris Trumbauer, the budget officer for the county. Good afternoon, Mr. Trumbauer.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Thank you for having me. Good afternoon to the board, the superintendent. If you please, I'll just jump right in.
Please
Great.
do.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here again. This seems to be a little annual tradition we've developed, and I think it's mutually beneficial. I just want to, before I get started, I want to harken back to last year, 12 months ago. And you remember at some point in time, I said, look, this is a really good year. Don't get used to this, right? I want you to remember that time as I go through the presentation this year, okay? And I also want to say that throughout my tenure as budget officer, I've had a very productive relationship with the superintendent's office, first with Mr. Shaknovich, now with Mr. Sansky and his team. We certainly expect that to continue. I understand also that the superintendent has developed a very productive relationship with the county executive. Some in our office may have even used the word bromance at some point, but it's very, I think, a good. It's a good start to what will hopefully be a good year. And as we come down off of the high that was last year, I hope that we keep the productive conversations and relationship up. With that, I'll get stared.
I'm feeling
Mr.
slighted
Mosier
up
has
here.
handed me the clicker, which is always dangerous. So I'm not sure where I'm clicking, Mr. Mosier, but do I have to turn it on?
Yeah.
Ooh,
It's a test.
It's vibrating. That's a good sign.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. First, I do want to point out on the title slide here, there is some italics and asterisks, which you always know is very important, right? So this is just to indicate that this is a very early fiscal projection. We don't introduce the budget until May, so we have several more months of economic data to receive before things are finalized. So I just want to point out on the record, these are estimates and subject to change. With that disclaimer done, we'll move on to page 2. What you're looking at here is a summary of the fiscal year 22 revenue. So fiscal year 22, we're in the process of closing the books on, this is the past fiscal year. And there's 2 numbers I want to call to your attention, and conveniently they are highlighted in red. The first is the income tax. So you'll see that the amount of income tax that we're going to end up getting is $38.4 million above what our revised fiscal 22 projection was. That's a lot of cake. Why is it so high? There's 2 reasons. First of all, as you remember, the past fiscal year, the economy was on fire. It was just red hot, and there was very strong wage growth. So that contributed to part of it. The other thing, and this is a phenomena that was also seen in our other peer counties, we got a late state distribution of local income tax. So the way that local income tax comes in, it goes to the state and then they process it, and then they give it to the counties, right, in different distributions. Ever since the federal tax law changes of 4 or 5 years ago, the way that the income taxes come in has been a little clunky because people have changed their filing methods. They're pre-filing, or they're doing more pass-through entities. They're doing all kinds of different things. And so the system is still trying to get caught up with projecting how that comes in. Long story short, we got a very large and very late state distribution last year, and so that contributed to that 22 overage, which is a good thing. We like getting more money, but we hope that going forward we'll be able to project a little bit more accurately, because when we get closer to the right amount, we can budget more accurately. Even though if we're going to miss, we want to miss on the conservative side, because it's always better to have more money than you expected than to have less. The second one I want to highlight is a recordation and transfer. So for the last year or so, the budget office has been saying the housing market is unsustainable. We can't rely on this recordation and transfer tax revenue. It's going to come down. Turns out it did not come down in 22. Save that point, because I'm going to show you a slide in a few slides that's going to show you it did come down in 23. So we planned for that to come down. We just didn't see that happen in 22. And so that number in the middle of the page, 198.1 million, that's the amount of recordation and transfer tax the county got in fiscal 22. That is probably the highest amount of recordation and transfer tax that this county will see for the foreseeable future. That is a peak, and I've got a graph in a little bit that'll show you that. But if you go down, the rest of the revenue sources came in, at or maybe a little better than expected. That's always a good thing, and it's largely attributable to the economy being stronger for a longer time than was predicted. But if you look all the way down to the bottom, I've got that delta equals 137.3 million. So that's the original revision we did from when we introduced the fiscal year 22 budget to when we introduced the fiscal year 23 budget and we revised our 22 estimates, right? And so that 137 number, then you add that 88.9 number that's at the bottom of the revised amount. So that's when we closed the books, we got 88.9 million, even more than what we revised, okay? So now if you look to the next slide, this is where we're going to sum all that up. So those two numbers I mentioned before, that's 226.2 million. Now, also because of the way operations happen, we were able to save about 12.7 million over the course of the fiscal year. Okay, so you add that to the 226. So that gives us a revenue in excess of expenditure of about 239 million. That's pretty good. Now, in the FY22 budget, we had programmed in $110.8 million of one-time fund balance utilization. That's what we do every year. If we have one-time money, we program it into the budget. As you'll remember last year, that was largely done as pay-go into the capital budget to keep our projects on track. But anyway, 110.8 million. Well, so it turns out because we had revenue in excess of expenditures of 238.9, we actually ended up generating additional fund balance of that amount, 128.1 million for fiscal 22. So all that is good news. And you'll remember we carried over about 241 from 21. So now we can add that 128 number that I just showed you on the last slide for 22. That gives us at this moment in time an available fund balance in the FY23 budget of 369 million. Remember, last year, we thought that number was going to be around 260. So we programmed in 262 million of one-time fund balance in our 23 budget. The vast majority of that, over 200,000, was pay-go into the capital budget. So the last number at the bottom there, 106.6, is our estimate at this moment in time. Actually, when we ran the numbers, it was 2 weeks ago, but it hasn't changed. $106.6 million that's available now, and that will be available to be deployed in our FY24 budget as either pay-go in the capital or towards one-time costs. Okay, this is a reminder of our rainy day fund, formerly known as the Revenue Stabilization Fund. We have a balance at the end of the 22 fiscal year of about 107.7 million. We did raise the cap that's allowable up to 7%. So, and we did a maximum contribution last year, or the current fiscal year, of 23 million. So we project at the end of this fiscal year it will be 132 million, and the administration strategy is to continue keeping that at its maximum because it will be very handy when and if there is an economic downturn. Okay, this is comparing fiscal 22 to 23, just year over year. You see the top level number there in 22 versus 23. That's an increase of 284 million. That's a lot. That's 15%. It's artificially high, however, because of the large fund balance number. So if we want to do apples to apples, I like to subtract out the incremental fund balance number. And then last year, we got a one-time state assistance payment of $3 million for public safety aid. So we subtract that out because we ain't getting it this year. And so looking from year to year in recurring revenue only, it's a still healthy but much less number of about 130 million. That's about 7.4%. And you remember last January, inflation, CPI, was about 7.5%. So it sounds like a big increase, but it was actually pretty much on par with what was happening in the macro economy. Okay, next, this is looking over the most recent 3-year period, and you can see 21 to 22 to 23, all revenue sources. And what you'll note generally is pretty healthy growth across the 3 years, as you would expect with a strong economy. But the one thing that I've got circled, and this is what I referenced earlier, is recordation and transfer tax. So whenever there's a refinance or there's a new property bought or sold, the county gets recordation and transfer taxes. As the mortgage rates went up to 7%, that activity dramatically fell off. Just like we knew it would, we just didn't know when it would happen. And so now we are looking at a revised estimate in 23 of 131 million. That's pretty much on par with what our budgeted amount of fiscal 23 was, but it's a significant reduction from that peak of fiscal year 22. Now, that's gives you a total at the bottom of something that's a little bit unusual, which is a year-to-year drop in overall revenue of about 3%. But that's due almost entirely because of the fall off in recordation and transfer tax. Now, that's bad news because we have less money, but the good news, silver lining, is we planned for this, we budgeted for this, so we are not driving over our headlights going into 24. So that's a good thing. This is probably a familiar pie chart for you all by now, but it shows the different revenue sources as proportional slices of pie. The two biggest slices are yellow, which I guess would be custard, and red, which maybe is strawberry rhubarb. But those are our two biggest pie slices. That's property tax and local income tax. The other most important slice of revenue is the pumpkin pie color. That's recordation and transfer tax. Now that's at 6% this year. That's a little artificially low proportionally because of that tan slice at the top. The fund balance was so high that's kind of dampening the other slices. So usually recordation and transfer tax would be close to upper single digits, close to 10%. And we expect that balance to come back in future years. But you can see the other sources of income, license and permits, local sales tax, other things like that, that the county receives are much smaller in proportion. Okay, so now we'll get to the good stuff. What are we seeing at this moment in time for fiscal year 23? Remember, we're about halfway through fiscal year 23. It began on July 1st of last year. On the income tax, we're coming in largely as expected. Income tax revenue is strong. Again, there's a little bit of noise in the data because of what I mentioned before. It's just the behavior has changed in tax filers because of the federal tax law changes. So there's something called pass-through entities, which are just coming in very episodically. So it makes forecasting difficult. But all in all, we see continued strength in income tax for the remainder of this fiscal year. We get a little squirrely looking ahead towards 24. Property tax is going to be solid. The county has a very generous 2% homestead credit, which essentially provides a buffer between the assessed value versus the street value of a home. So even if property values go down dramatically, the county is protected because the assessed value that homeowners are paying their taxes on is artificially lower. So there's this buffer area between the assessed value and the actual value. So even if there's a fall off, the county still is on the assessed value. And then recordation and transfer tax, as we discussed, that is going to be lower. It's pretty much coming in as budgeted for 23, and we expect in 24 that it will be largely flat, which is a big difference from the huge spike that you'll see in the next slide. I love this slide for two reasons. One, the dual shark fins just show you how easy it is to tell when something isn't right, right? So the first shark fin on the FY 2001 through 2007, that's the run up and fall off from what we call the real estate bubble, right? Fun story. I came onto the council in 2010, just as we were getting out of this thing, and it was no fun to be in budget time when you're recovering from the Great Recession. And part of the reason was because the county had spent a lot of that recordation and transfer funds on recurring things, and when that went away, they had to figure out how to plug that hole. The good news is we learned our lesson from that. And this year we continued to budget the recordation and transfer tax lower than what it came in at, because that dotted red line that hopefully you can see, that's what we project as the natural incremental growth year over year. You see, it's pretty linear. It's pretty, it goes up a little bit, a nice little slope there. So when we saw in fiscal year 19, 2021 that it was skyrocketing up, we knew, okay, this is fun, but it's not going to last. And so now what we're seeing in 23 is that it's looking like it's going to come down pretty much dead on where we thought that natural growth should be at about 130, 131 million. Now, what do we look forward to in fiscal year 24? It's a little harder to say. It's possible that the real estate market could rebound if interest rates go back down. It's also possible that it could just be stagnant and it could hold on kind of a new normal. Or if interest rates stay really high and, the market is shaken up, we could see a little downside potential there. So fortunately for us prognosticators, we have 3 months or more of data to come in later this year before we have to make our actual projections for the FY24 budget, and we hope to know a little bit more by that time. All right, this is the main event, fiscal year 24, right? What are we looking at? As I mentioned before, in the income tax, as of now, it looks pretty strong, but there's downside potential if there's a recession. Is there going to be a recession? I don't know. Anybody who tells you they know doesn't know, but there seems to be a general consensus among economists that there is likely to be a short or shallow recession in the next 12 to 18 months. What is it going to look like? When is it going to come? I don't know, but we're going to plan for it to be on the safe side. Property tax, as I mentioned before, this should be pretty robust. We have that buffer between the assessment and the actual property values that protects the county. So that should be fine. Recordation and transfer, this is where we experienced the decline in 23, and we think it's going to continue to be a cooler market going forward in 24. And then there's the general uncertainty in the economy. As I mentioned, there does seem to be some downside risk for the potential for an inflation, but we do see, a recession. We do see that inflation is moderating. Again, impossible to project what it's going to look like in 3, 4, 6 months, but the general consensus is that the federal the federal interest rates hikes have started to do the job that they intended, which is to bring inflation down, but it's probably going to come down slowly and steadily. So that may slow economic growth a little bit, but it may also keep us out of a big recession. So there's people with PhDs in macro economics that can argue about that much better than me, but I'll just say that there's a little bit of uncertainty and we don't know exactly what's going to happen. Okay, so as we in the county side begin to put together our budget, which is happening now, there are several pressures that we need to be cognizant of. The first, again, is pretty apparent, but we do have continued high inflation and we have wage growth as well, and this is simply increased expenses in our operating budget. As I noted before, we are realizing a reduction in the recordation and transfer tax revenue, so that means that our overall incremental recurring revenue is shrinking. And then we have state education funding mandates, which I don't have to explain to this good group. But then we have some other annual kind of built-in increases for things like debt service and pension and our pay packages that we have to consider as well. So this is a new slide this year, but we wanted to show you kind of what we're looking at as we're entering our budget building stage. We're at the budget office are saying, again, early estimates, but right now, incremental recurring revenue, we think for fiscal year 24, somewhere in the neighborhood of $80 million. Now, Prior to the last couple years, we would say that's a pretty good year, maybe average, a little bit above average. Typically, the county tends to be somewhere between, 50 to 80 in the pre-pandemic years. But last year, we got a little bit better news. We were at 130 million of recurring revenue. So again, told you that last year. It's a good year, but don't get used to it. So this year we're back into what I would say is what would be a normal good year. So let's say $80-85 million. Now, as you work your way down this chart, you'll see several rows of what we call non-discretionary items. So these are things that the county has an obligation to fund. It's our pension contribution, the debt service on our capital program, our self-insurance fund, the health insurance fund. We have to obviously negotiate pay packages with our bargaining units, right? So ballpark, back of the envelope math right now, we think somehow, some way that'll come in the neighborhood of $45 million or so, okay? Oh, good news, Chris. That means you got $40 million to spend on discretionary. Sure, that sounds great until you remember that the superintendent's recommendation is asked for 86 million of county funding. And so right now, with current assumptions, we're looking at only having 40-ish million dollars to spread throughout all of those discretionary items. Now, last year, we were very proud to work with you all, and we had $50 million of incremental funding for the Board of Ed. We would love to do that again this year. We've seen the superintendent's budget. We know you guys are deliberating on it as well. There's a lot of good stuff in there. There's some things that are mandated. There's some things that are eventually we're going to have to do, and we'd love to work on that. But we're going to have to figure out some priorities, and we're going to have to figure out from the county side, if there's additional revenue available or if there's cost cuttings we can make in other arenas to look at. So this is just the kind of eyes wide open slide. It's going to be a hopefully good process and collaborative process to try and figure out where we go from here. But I did want to make sure everybody realized it's a little different environment than last year. And then finally, I just wanted to end with reminding everybody that there are 8 scheduled budget town halls with the county executive. They're in the 7 council districts, and each one is co-hosted with the council member of that district. And then we have a countywide Spanish language town hall that's held virtually in February as well. So of course, everyone is welcome at those. And I will say, as someone that's been through 4 years of these budget town halls, they do make a difference. We do hear about compelling needs, and our budgets have reflected some things we've heard about in those meetings, so they are important. And with that, I'll end my presentation and be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Trumbauer, thank you as always. That was, I think, extremely helpful, and we're grateful for your time during what I know is a very busy time for you. I will, if I see lights, I will call on my fellow members. So I see Ms. Ellis, you have a question.
Mr. Trumbauer, I just want to thank you. Happy New Year. And thank you. Your delivery gets better every year.
Well, I apologize for my voice this year. I'm a
Oh,
little
no.
hoarse because I think, like each and every one of your children in the school system, I've gotten some sort of slight cold. But
Yeah.
it's not COVID, so it could be worse.
I
Yeah.
couldn't tell.
Yeah.
But all I can tell you is, for me, there is nothing fun about the budget, but you kept it fun. So
I
thanks.
love the budget, so I don't know what is wrong with me, but I enjoy talking about the budget.
I really have no questions, but thank you.
Great.
Thank you. Ms. Corkadell.
Thank you. Great presentation, always greatly appreciated. Just a quick question. So when will we know roughly like what our cost for our capital programs are, that cost of financing is going to be? Because obviously that has probably significantly changed and dynamically. So the pay-goes were great, I presume, because that kept us out of that for those projects. But for the projects moving forward, do we have any preliminary projections of what our costs?
We do. Thank you for the question. Ms. Corcadell, we do. And last year, because of inflation and supply chain issues, we built in inflators for subsequent years for capital projects, increase in overhead and things like that. So our team on the county side in our Department of Public Works have been working on that and updating cost estimates. So we know that for our projects. I know that your team has been doing the same for Board of Ed projects. And I will say, throughout my tenure working with county government, which has actually been 12 years, believe it or not, it's a bit unusual to see cost increases in school projects because you guys build them deliberately to assume everything possible could go wrong so that it always gets done on budget. Am I right, Matt? Yeah.
Yes.
So
yes.
so it's kind of, and that's great because then when it comes in under budget, then those savings get applied forward to the next school projects. It's a great system. But what we're seeing this year preliminarily is for the first time in recent memory that we're actually seeing cost increases in school construction projects too. So it is a systemic issue. It's something that we're budgeting for. But I mean, the reality is what's happening is it's making projects more expensive, and that decreases the capacity in the capital budget to bring in new projects because the finite capacity we have is being used to keep existing projects on track. So the short answer is we're aware of that and we're budgeting for it and we're trying our best to keep everything on schedule, even though it's more expensive, but that's coming likely at a cost of our ability to add in new projects to the 6-year CIP.
So when we do our long-range planning, we're going to need to be accommodating a more probably a more realistic in the short term, slow of projects that are county dependent. Right?
I think it would be mutually beneficial to be cognizant of that and to recognize that pinch point. I mean, traditionally, the board or the superintendent's budget has brought forward capital projects in an aggressive timeline, and then the county takes it and works with our planning advisory board, and we sometimes have to defer projects. And it's all part of the mix, right? But yeah, I mean, considering what the current environment is going forward, it probably would be strategically wise to look through that lens of, hey, things are a little bit different, things are more expensive. Maybe we should be a little bit more realistic in the forecast for timelines for new projects. But also, who knows? There could be additional things that happen that could could mitigate those cost increases. I mean, but it's a good question and one that I think would be smart to put some thought into.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ellis, I see your light on. Is that the old light? Okay. So I see no other lights, so I believe that's it. So again, Mr. Trumbauer, Happy New Year. Thank you again. And would you like to say something, Dr. Bedell?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for the presentation. It's my first opportunity to hear the presentation, and we absolutely look forward to working in a collaborative nature to make sure that we come to an agreement on a budget that we think will allow for us to move our agenda in this school district, but also represent this county at a high level. One quick question, and it's really just for my knowledge. I had to look this up, so I don't know if other people understand this. The recordation of what was it? Recordation
and transfer tax.
Right. So like a common person, I don't know. I don't really know that. I had to look it up, the active recording deeds and various property documents in the public registry office. So my question is, given the fact that the market is starting to correct itself a little bit in the housing market, did you based on your data, did the downturn in terms of people buying property decline like sometime around August, and now we probably have more people choosing to rent because the interest rates have gone up? And do you think that that's part of the cause of that decline?
So the general decline. So recordation transfer taxes are essentially real estate taxes,
right,
that the county gets a portion of. And the overall driver of that is real estate activity. So when a house is bought or sold, there's recordation and transfer taxes.
Right.
When you refinance, there's recordation taxes, but not transfer taxes. And for a sustained period of time, when interest rates were at those record lows, it was going gangbusters on both. People were buying and selling, and people were refinancing the heck out of their houses, right? What we saw when the interest rates went up, which was pretty much at the beginning of fiscal year 23, because I showed you fiscal year 22 stayed hot the whole time. So this would be in midsummer, I think, of last year. We saw a dramatic fall off in refinancing. And then we also saw a less dramatic but still significant fall off in real estate transfers. Now, again, I'm not an expert in the real estate market, but there is high demand for housing, but that's being offset by the high interest rates. People don't want to pay 7% on a mortgage, right? So my layman's opinion is, if the mortgage rates were to come down to a more reasonable level of something that's still historically low, but it won't obviously get close to 3% like it was. But if we get down in the 4 or 5% range, then I think there may be pent up demand, and we may see a slight modest recovery. But again, we're getting beyond my level of expertise, but that's we knew that level of real estate tax revenue was unsustainable, and that's why we knew that it would come down. And we're pretty proud that we so far guessed right where it would come down to. But from this point, it could go up a little, it could stay flat, or downside, it could go down if mortgage rates go back up. But we hope that doesn't happen.
Thank you for that.
Sure thing.
Thank you. I may be showing my age, but my husband and I, when we bought our first property after we got married, we were amazed when interest rates got below 10%.
Yeah.
So the world changes a lot.
It does indeed.
Oh yeah. I remember my parents dealing with 18 at one time for something. So
Right.
yes, so things go up and down. So thank you so much, Mr. Trumbauer. Have a wonderful new year, and thank you for everything you do. We
Absolutely.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you. And I'll look forward to working with you guys over the coming months.
All right. So that brings us, Dr. Bedell, to your update, item 5.02.
All right, I am ready to, I know I have a couple of slide decks, and so just wanted to remind the community that we are focusing on goal number 5. And even as the 100-day entry plan has been posted, I'm still meeting with different entities and different departments. So I would encourage people to still go back, look at some of those areas that may not have been populated. You should see some of those areas still being populated, because even though we're in the major focus of engaging with the community through our listening and learning tours, I'm still making sure that I cover some of those other areas. So continue to take a look at those updates. I want to go to the next slide and just remind everybody that these are the remaining listening and learning tour sessions. Last night, we completed at Crofton High School, and it was wonderful. It was just an excellent night of engagement, excellent night of dialogue. And I feel like we really did get some good feedback, in addition to having a really nice turnout last night. So we're encouraging our community to get out and engage with us, because that information will be utilized to help us put together our post-entry plan. We are at Tyler Heights tonight, and so I look forward to engaging the community. If I'm not mistaking, that one begins at 5:30 p.m. tonight. So we want to make sure people are aware of that. All right, next slide. Just an update on transportation. As you can see, the numbers are steady dropping. We're down to 53 bus driver vacancies as of today. 59 drivers are currently in training. So even as we're moving people into getting their CDLs, we still are managing to keep the number of people in training close to 60. We're in the final stages of route identification for potential route switches at semester break. And here's the really good news. The number of changes to accommodate those without service for the entire first semester, they're likely to be far less than originally thought. And that's because of the van initiative that this board approved, and the work that we're doing with a number of our partners that are providing transportation services. So I'm really proud of the work that our team has done, the work that Mr. Mosier and his team's doing around communicating and keeping everybody apprised every single day, AM and PM, on what's happening with transportation. So I just wanted to provide that update. And then finally, just a couple of things that's not on the slide. I want the community to be aware that our strategic plan RFP, our request for proposal, will be going out on the 9th of January. So we're going to get ready to start figuring out who can come in and help us with our strategic planning process that will begin in May. I also want to thank our unified sports students, faculty, and staff. I had an opportunity to visit that program over at Crofton, and all of our high schools were represented at that event. And it's just it's a beautiful thing to see the collaboration and to see how our county works together in that area. And I was very proud of that. Over the winter break, I had an opportunity to go to the Meade basketball tournament, had a chance to talk to the athletes after the game was over, and just really excited about what's happening with our winter sports at this juncture. And then I really do want to thank our communities for coming out to our listening and learning tours. No matter how many people show up, the people who do show up, they have engaged, they have leaned in on the conversation, and they're giving us really good information that will help inform the development of our next strategic plan. I want to give a kudos to our facilities, operations, and IT department. As the board has been aware, with the cold weather, a lot of our facilities took a hit. And even personally, like my daughter's university, she can't even go back. She was supposed to head back this upcoming weekend, but they had pipes burst and dorm damage. So they're being delayed like 2 weeks with going back. Our team got out and these people responded, even in times when they really didn't have to do it. Over the Christmas weekend, these folks were out in our building. So Kyle, Matt, to all the rest of our folks, I really want to give them extended kudos, because we were able to open up school for the most part successfully on Monday, outside of Bates boiler issue, but that was very minimum when you're thinking about 130 campuses. Yeah. And finally, to our community, to our board, to our faculty and staff, and our students, I do want to wish everybody a happy new year. We're into 2023. And the only thing that I would ask of everybody, we always set these goals. The one thing I will pose to this community, think about your future 2023 accomplishments. On January 1st, 2024, after another trip around the summer, ask yourself this question: what would I have accomplished personally and professionally? And if I want to be more successful, what do I need to stop doing today? And what do I need to start doing to ensure that I am able to accomplish my goals, both professionally and personally? That wraps up the superintendent remarks, Madam President.
Dr. Bedell, thank you very, very much. And thank you for that. I will be thinking about that myself as we move forward. And yes, an added thanks to the facilities team, especially. I know it was tough on Bates families in my district, but I'm very grateful for the swift response and the fact that the next day everybody was back in place. And we are in the process, I believe, of replacing a very old system there. So glad that's underway. Thank you. So that brings us to item 5.03, new course approval. Dr. Bedell.
Excellent. So we have staff coming up, but the superintendent recommends approval of this course beginning in the 2023-2024 school year. As noted, that course is AP Pre-Calculus, and we'll have our staff present.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Nicole Howard, and I serve as the Director of Curriculum and Assessments. I'm also joined by amazing coordinator in curriculum and instruction. At the end of the presentation today, we'll be happy to answer questions around this course. At this time, I will have my secondary mathematics coordinator introduce herself.
Good afternoon. I'm Ruth Goldstraw. I am the coordinator of Secondary Mathematics High School.
In accordance with board policy for curriculum, today we will present a single course for your approval. The main goal of our AACPS strategic plan is to ensure that every student meets or exceeds standards as achievement gaps are eliminated. Courses are designed to provide all AACPS students with rigorous, relevant, and inclusive opportunities that enable them to successfully navigate and positively impact the 21st century global society. AP Pre-Calculus is a year-long high school course. This course will challenge students to think critically and creatively, provide rigorous content for students to explore independently and collaboratively with others from diverse backgrounds, and engage students in innovative interdisciplinary analysis and problem solving around real-world situations steeped in mathematics. AP Pre-Calculus increases access to higher levels of mathematics. It allows for students who are on pace in their mathematics learning trajectory, who might not be on a STEM pathway interested in taking AP Calculus, to have an opportunity to take an AP Mathematics course. By offering AP Pre-Calculus, AACPS will be removing access barriers and opening doors for a more diverse student population to engage in college-level mathematics coursework. As you can see on the slide, this is a visual showing multiple opportunities for students to engage in rigorous math content. Students can take Algebra 2 in their junior year and have an opportunity to take an AP course in mathematics that is not calculus or statistics. And if students choose to take pre-calculus in their junior year, it unlocks a plethora of options for them once they finish. Our plan is for this course to be available for students to enroll in for the 23-24 school year. With that goal in mind, our teams will be working hard to ensure that we put in place all that is necessary around curriculum writing and professional development for student success. So at this time, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Thank you. Ms. Shulhan.
Yes, I always one of my favorite things, part of my job is to approve new courses that you all bring before us. Are always so wonderful. And so with the number of staff vacancies we have at present, will students at every high school be offered this course in person, or will we need to do some combining of things and virtual class instruction as we go forward with implementation, assuming it passes the board?
Assuming it passes, the intention is.
No.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Oh, yeah, hers
Does that
is on.
work?
Yeah.
Okay. Confident that it passes. We will actually not have to add any additional staffing because we are sunsetting standard pre-calculus with the philosophy that if you make it to pre-calculus, you deserve an honors or an AP standard grade, as opposed to just the 3 or the 4, but the 4.5 or the 5 of the AP course. So we will be sunsetting our standard pre-calc, and that does not mean that there won't be some virtual options, because some of our schools certainly are going to have needs, even the virtual academy, right? So
That's
there
true.
will be some virtual options if necessary, but the goal is for it to be in person, face-to-face, like all our other math courses.
Fantastic. I absolutely have a motion when appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see no other lights, but I just want to ask quickly, the statements around, what it does for students to have the opportunity to take this at an AP level. Can you speak a little more to sort of the ground for those statements? Are you referring to certain sets of data, or how is that coming about?
So we know that when a student is on their traditional trajectory, right? So you're 9th grade taking Algebra 1 or geometry, vice versa in 10th grade, 11th grade is Algebra 2, thinking about those particular students. The next option they have is solely AP Statistics.
Right.
AP Statistics is a whole different ballgame than pre-calculus, because pre-calculus continues that algebra trajectory. So this allows them to take an AP course in more familiar territory,
Mhm.
if that makes sense, as opposed to shifting gears to AP Stat. And we know a number of our counselors wanting to provide the AP opportunity for our students in mathematics, put them in AP Stat, and they find themselves struggling.
Right.
And we feel like this might actually be a better fit for a lot of our students.
As a very non-math person, I should say, though I've actually taught ancient math, but that's a whole other thing. But it is interesting to me because statistics, as far as I can tell, it's just a different discipline and
It really
attracts a different
Brain.
bent, if you will. So I was curious about that. So thank you for that. I'm sorry, Ms. Schalheim, do you have another light?
Oh, no, that was my old light.
Oh,
but
okay.
I'll move whenever you
Okay.
want me to.
All right. Well, I see no more lights. So, Ms. Schalheim?
Yeah, I move to approve this course. Excited about it, and thank you for bringing it.
Is there a second? Okay. Mr. Mosier?
Mrs. Ellis,
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell,
Aye.
Ms. Schalheim,
Aye.
Ms. Dent, Mr. McGrath,
Abstain.
Mr. Silkworth,
Aye.
Ms. Frank,
Aye.
Dr. Tobin.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0 with one abstention.
Thank you. Thank you both very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to section 6, consent items.
President.
Yes, 6.01, alternative student transportation.
Yeah, President Tobin, I recommend that the board approve consent items labeled 6.01 through 6.04 on today's agenda.
Well, wait, did anybody bundle?
Oh, yeah. Let's bundle it.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We've consensus to bundle? Okay, now we can, yes. Go ahead. Yeah, you.
Okay. President Tobin, I recommend that the board approve consent items labeled as 6.01 through 6.04 on today's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Frank?
I just wanted to mention that we're still focusing on the alternative student transportation, and just a huge thank you for continuing those efforts. And we think you're doing a phenomenal job in District 3 with getting transportation figured out. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Mr. McGrath?
Yeah, just to add on, from the student perspective, I think Dr. Bedell has been doing such a great job, and I just want to say I am so grateful to have such a talented superintendent doing so much for the school system. I was very pleased to see the transportation update, and I'm just very grateful for everything that you do.
Yes.
I would say this, thank you, but I keep looking over at Matt because like his people, they're getting it done, and there's definitely an urgency. I think everybody can sense it. It's not perfect, but I think the community really does feel like we're responding. So I just want to make sure that I pass it down to the people that are in the trenches. But thank you, Zach and Corinne. Thank you.
This is a big lift, and thank you very much. And I would just add, while we've digressed a minute here, something that I think is important, Dr. Bedell, and I meant to mention it earlier when you were talking about bus drivers. And I hope the public, I know most of the public has heard this, but just to say it again, even if we get to the point where every single route is filled, which we hope we will, we still don't have a bench. And I know in my district, there are cases where, a bus is on for a week and then off because that driver is sick or has to be called out. So the work that the transportation department under Mr. Stansky's direction and Dr. Bedell's has done is extraordinary, but we're still working against just the need for human capital. So we're grateful for the patience of the entire county because we know this is a long and arduous process. So thank you to everyone. Okay, with that, I see no more lights. So, Mr. Mosher.
So this is a vote on the bundle. Mrs. Ellis,
Oh, yes.
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell,
Aye.
Ms. Shawheim,
Aye.
Ms. Dent,
Aye.
Mr. McGrath,
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth,
Aye.
Ms. Frank,
Aye.
Dr. Tobin.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Okay, and now we need a motion to approve, right?
So moved.
That was your motion to approve.
Oh, I
You
thought you
bundled
said it
by
was the
con-
motion to bundle.
No, this was on the bundled motion.
Oh, got it. Okay, I
You
misunderstood. All
bundled
right,
by consensus.
thank you. Okay, that takes us to section 7. Item 7.01, administrative personnel appointments. Dr. Bedell.
Madam President, there are no administrative personnel appointments this board meeting.
Thank you. Item 7.02, personnel. Dr. Bedell.
The superintendent recommends that the board approve the actions as stipulated on the attached sheets.
So moved.
Okay. Seeing no lights. Mr. Mosher.
Mrs. Ellis,
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell,
Aye.
Ms. Shawheim,
Aye.
Ms. Dent,
Aye.
Mr. McGrath,
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth,
Aye.
Ms. Frank,
Aye.
Dr. Tobin.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you. Item 7.03, sabbaticals. Dr. Bedell.
Thank you, Madam President. The superintendent recommends that the sabbatical leave request be approved.
So moved.
Seeing no lights. Mr. Mosher.
Mrs. Ellis,
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell,
Aye.
Ms. Shawheim,
Aye.
Ms. Dent,
Aye.
Mr. McGrath,
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth,
Aye.
Ms. Frank,
Aye.
Dr. Tobin.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you. So that brings us to policy revisions, second reading. Dr. Bedell.
Thank you, Madam President. This is the second reading for this policy. No comments were received during the 30-day public comment period. For this item, we do have Grace here prepared to go over it.
Good afternoon, everyone. For the record, Grace Wilson, Acting Legislative and Policy Specialist, here to present policy GAJ, whistleblower protections. As Dr. Bedell said, this policy is before you on second reading. This is a new policy that establishes an administrative complaint procedure for an AACPS employee who believes they are the subject of personnel action in violation of the Maryland Public School Whistleblower Protections Act. As Dr. Bedell said, there were no comments received during the 30-day public comment period. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Okay, I see no lights. So that will move forward.
Wonderful. Yes, this policy will be back before you on January 18th for third reading. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Wilson. So that takes us to item 7.05, Old Mill Complex, avigation easement. The vocabulary word of the day.
Absolutely. Madam President, the superintendent recommends approval of the avigation easement at the Old Mill Complex.
All right, seeing no lights. Mr. Mosher.
Mrs. Ellis, Ms. Corkadell,
Aye.
Ms. Shawheim,
Aye.
Ms. Dent,
Aye.
Mr. McGrath,
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth,
Aye.
Ms. Frank,
Aye.
Dr. Tobin.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you. And that takes us to 7.06,
All
second
right.
quarter operating budget supplemental and fund transfer for FY 2023. Dr. Bedell.
The superintendent recommends approval of the second quarter operating budget supplemental and fund transfer for FY 2023 to be submitted to the county council. We do have Matt Stansky and staff here to take us through this item.
Good afternoon, Mr. Stansky.
Good afternoon. For the record, Matt Stansky, Acting Chief Operating Officer.
For the record, Melissa Camella, Acting Director of Financial Operations.
As this board knows, annually we bring a second and fourth quarter transfer. This is the second quarter transfer that we're presenting here today. With the board's approval, this would be sent to the county executive for introduction to the county council at a date to be determined. The vast majority of the supplemental and transfer is additional federal revenue, really recognizing the ESSER 2 and 3 and other federal grants that are multi-year in nature. So while the total award was given to us 2 years ago or last fiscal year, we have up to 3 years to spend these funds. And so this is really a recognition of the anticipated use of funds for fiscal year 23. And so that's roughly about $16.9 million. We also have about $1 million in state grants that we're getting to support our pre-K, our 3-year-old pre-K programs, as well as our Judy centers. And on the local side, this is just a recognition. You heard Mr. Trumbauer allude to the increase in interest rates. Although one few positives of the increase in interest rates is money that we have in our bank gets more interest. And so we are recognizing that revenue here today as well for $1 million. So all in, we're looking at 19 million. So there's no additional county money being requested in this proposal. And with that, Melissa and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Stansky. Ms. Schulheim.
I don't have a question, but I will motion when it's appropriate.
Okay. I see no other lights. All right, Ms. Schulheim.
So I move that we approve the second quarter transfer as presented.
Second.
Okay. Seeing no additional lights, Mr. Mosier.
Mrs. Ellis,
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell,
She stepped away, I think.
Ms. Schulheim,
Aye.
Ms. Dent,
Aye.
Mr. McGrath,
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth,
Aye.
Ms. Frank,
Abstain.
Dr. Tobin.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0 with 1 abstention and 1 absent.
Okay. Thank you both. That brings us to the review items. 8.01 Minority and Small Business Enterprise Utilization Report for fiscal year 2022. These are review items, so I don't believe there's a recommendation here. I did have a question about the Minority and Small Business Enterprise Utilization Report.
Thanks.
Welcome back, Mr.
Thank you.
Stansky.
Once again, for the record, Matt Stansky, Acting Chief Operating Officer.
It was just a quick question. In that report, it's fairly clear that in the 10-year analysis that there's been quite a drop in terms of percentages. And so I just wondered if you could say a little about what's behind that, because there is a statement that the program is robust and so forth. So I'd just like to hear a little more filled in on
Sure.
that.
Yeah. And I mean, I would point out that we did see increases from last year to this year.
Right.
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 I would say that with the economy returning to being strong in the last 5 to 7 years, that there's just been more private sector opportunities for some of our minority and small business owners to participate in private sector projects, which just, to be frank, is just more lucrative because of the regulatory requirements that we have for those firms to get paid.
Right.
But I think we've done a nice job in the last couple of years bouncing back with those percentages.
Mm-hmm.
And even with the decline in overall awards, we did see the percentages go up, which is what the ultimate goal is every year.
And it does seem you've mostly met your goals individually in the project, in the areas
Absolutely.
that are okay.
Miss Avery, who leads that department, just does a wonderful job in reaching out to new potential vendors. She hosts a regional minority small business forum every year that we co-host with Montgomery County and Prince George's County to talk about doing business with Anne Arundel County Public Schools and those entities as well. And so we are constantly looking for new vendors and new partners to help us with the good work of building and renovating our school buildings.
Terrific. Well, thank you. I just wanted to make sure, given that this was a public document, that the public had a good understanding of sort of the context of this. So I appreciate your answering my question. Thank you
Absolutely.
very much. Okay, I see no additional lights on that. And so that brings us to 8.02 award of contracts. Any questions from any members? Okay. Seeing nothing, that will bring us to
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, did we have a second on that? Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. We will see you back on Wednesday, January 18th. Good afternoon.